There's a photograph of Paul Bowen that is very different from the rest of them. He often goes to Tav's boatyard to find scraps of metal and objects that are discarded to make his sculpture. So we met there and we were shooting all around. There was a big boat and dry dock and we were shooting all around it, and it was really very visual, but the boat was enormous and kind of swallowing Paul. And I wasn't satisfied with what I was seeing because Paul was getting really diminished in the frame by these huge objects around him. So I said to him, just stay here for a moment, Paul. And I walked around just to look at different areas, and I turned at one point and I saw Paul through a little space between the propeller of the boat and another piece of metal. And it was a little tiny opening like this, and I could see Paul's face. And I just said to him, Paul, look at me. And he looked through the space, and that was the moment. That was it. It was Paul's face kind of framed by these rusty pieces of metal. And I was in photographic heaven. It was like the moment after struggling.
As a summer resident here for over 25 years, I've been a big fan of yours for a long, long time, especially for the body of work that you've shot here. And now you're about to have a new exhibit at PAM, which to people who are watching is PTown's Met Museum, in case you don't know. And it's called the Artists of Provincetown. So can we start with talking about what that's about?
As you've mentioned, I've made a lot of work in Provincetown, and most of it is male figure work in nature. I had an exhibition last year at Lesh Gallery of a retrospective of about 23 years of work from 1999 of that work, and I'm super proud of it. But as fun as that is, it does get boring after a while. And photography was a part of my Provincetown experience for years and years and years. It is a part of my experience wherever I go.
Yeah.
And I have a tradition of environmental portraits. It's kind of how I started years and years ago. And I wanted to know more about the artist community in Provincetown. So I decided in 2015 that I wanted to embark on something new there. And it was very, very casual at the beginning.
Yeah.
I just thought, I'll make some portraits of artists. And I contacted my friend Hunter Ohanian, who had been the director of the Fine Arts Work Center there for a bit. And was very connected and still is very connected to the artist community. And he gave me a list of about 25 names, and I just started working off the top of the list. And in 2017, that was 2015, I did about 10 to 12 portraits over a year and a half. And then in 2017, I was taking a sabbatical from my professor position at FIT and decided to spend my sabbatical in Provincetown making this project kind of larger and more meaningful. And that during my sabbatical, I made another 35 portraits. So it became something of substance at that point.
I have to tell you, you included one of my all-time favorite pre-town heroes, Ilona.
Ilona, yeah, for sure.
She was a remarkable woman.
Yep.
And how did you select the people that you ended up including?
I was kind of ignorant about who was in town making work and who was important to the legacy of the town. I learned as I went, and I became very good friends with Pasquale Natali, who was in the book and kind of became my guide throughout the project, and Midge Patel as well, who is also an artist in the book. And I started to learn from the two of them who everybody was, what their place in history in Provincetown was, and how important their legacy is to the town. I also want to mention, since you asked, it's always near to me. I don't know if you can see this. It's On Equal Ground by Norma Holt.
No, I
And
was
you'll
going to
see
talk
that
about it because you photographed 27 of the artists that she did 50 years ago. And
yes.
I wanted to tell you, whoever follows you, I won't be here 50 years time.
I won't either.
Tell me, I read that, but so explain to me and my people, who is Norma Holt? Who was Norma Holt?
So Norma Holt is a photographer who did a lot of work, but much of her work was in PTown. She actually was the woman who made the portraits of, as you know, on the wharf, there's those
Yes,
huge portraits of
yes,
women
yes.
on the wharf. That's Norma's work.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, so Norma made those now, but Norma just made portraits in town for probably 50 years, from the
Wow,
70s through her death.
wow.
Um, and much of them were of artists, and they've just accumulated. And in 1980, I think, was her first exhibition at PAM of these artist portraits called Face of the Artist. I didn't know about Norma when I started this.
Hmm.
And John Dowd actually was the first person who told me about Norma. I was photographing John, and he said, "Do you know Norma Holt?" And I was, "No." And he told me the history, and I started to research and seek out her work. And then when I got this book, I got the smaller book first, and then went to the museum and found this book.
Hmm.
And I started, as you can see, I've marked a lot of pages. I've started to try to target people who were still alive in
Okay.
this book, in Norma's
Yeah.
book. And I thought that that would be a really interesting crossover for the two of us to photograph these people decades apart from each other. Um, and it ended up being 27. I missed a couple of people. A couple of people passed away before I was able to get to
Yeah.
them. But it's been a really enriching part of this project, is to kind of reach back in time and connect with her and her work.
Yeah, because it says a lot about your work, but it also says much more about our town. The 27 artists were still there. Let's move on, if we may, because your
Sure.
other body of work is The
Okay.
Men in the Dunes, which we all love. How did that come about?
I first went to Provincetown in 1999, really impromptu. A friend called me and said, "I have a share in Provincetown. Somebody just like backed out.
Mhm.
Do you want a room in the share?" And I said, "What's Provincetown?" Having no idea what they were talking about. I don't know why I didn't know, but I didn't.
Yeah. You
And
lose your gay card for that, don't you?
exactly. Um, So he explained to me, and in 5 minutes, I said yes. And I was soon on a train to Boston.
Mhm.
And just, I mean, as most people, when they first go to Provincetown, it's a transformative experience
Absolutely.
for them. And it immediately just was overwhelming. And I spent the first week just kind of getting to know where I was and
Mhm.
understanding where I was. And before I left, it was film in those days,
Yeah.
right? Wasn't shooting digital, so I emptied my refrigerator into a bag, all the film that I had. I had all these odd pieces of film. I didn't know if I was going to make photographs there, but I said, let me bring film and see what happens. And one night I met a young man sitting on the bench at the turn,
Yeah.
um, right
Opposite
in
John
front of
Dowd's house.
John Dowd's house.
Mhm.
And I was walking around. It was late. I think it was late enough for like the bars to have closed, and I was just like strolling around the town, seeing what was happening. And I saw this young man sitting on the bench, and I sat down next to him, and we made a plan for the next morning to photograph him
Mhm.
on the dunes. I
Mhm.
didn't know where to go. He knew where to go. He
Yeah.
knew how to like cross the breakwater, like where to go on Boy Beach, like all of these. So he brought me on a whole tour of like Herring
Mhm.
Cove, and we made these really gorgeous photographs of him. And then a couple of nights later, I was in Macho Bar. And I mean, that experience with him was beyond the photographs. It was just becoming like really involved in the nature and the landscape of a place, and making the male nudes that I had been making for a bit already, and in that place, and just marrying the body to the landscape in a way that was just so powerful for me, just as an experience making before I even saw anything. A couple of nights later, I was in Macho Bar, and there was a beautiful young man at the bar, blonde, gorgeous man, who ends up being actor Jimmy Shaw. I don't know if you know Jimmy. Jimmy's very, very popular overseas. He's got a very rich career, but he was appearing in Touch Song Trilogy at, I think it was at Town Hall at the time. And we struck up a conversation, and he's very engaging and really just a really beautiful, open human being. And we made a plan for the next morning, same plan with Jimmy. So that was the start of these. It was Jimmy, and James was the other young man's name. And that was the start of the male figure work in the nature of Provincetown. I still cherish those photographs, and I've reconnected with both because of social media. I've been able to reconnect with both those men, and it's been really wonderful.
What I like about all your work, and I don't know, there's a great queer sensibility about that. Even in the portraiture, how important is that to you?
I mean, it's very important. It's very important. And for a long time, it was not conscious.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's my identity. So it was what was, as being authentic, I guess, to who I was. But I lean into it heavily now. I think it's very, very important for me to represent who I am. It's not only the queerness and the gayness of it. It's also my age. I'm representing, I think, men that are diverse in age and in economic status and in race and in body shape. Frankly, I did a project at the Stowaway a couple of years ago called Body Positivity, where I am during Bear Week, and I invited men to come and just get photographed. And I really believe in representation on this level. Of course, there's a certain category of my work that gets more attention than others, but I try to really cover as much of a diverse set of people. And I think it's important for me to reflect myself in many ways in those photographs.
Yeah, I've noticed. I came here, I think the year before you, but just for 2 weeks or a week. I've noticed a great movement in art here, and it seems to reflect the sensibility of a gay community, which is important because not all of us want pictures of cottages and flowers. And I loved it. You mentioned Eric Lesh, and he and the other galleries like him are an important addition to our town, I think, that go on. So the exhibition, he's here in the museum, which is the ground place, for a couple of months, I believe.
It's June 28th is the opening. I invite everybody to come. If you're in Provincetown, June 28th, I'd love to see you. Come say hello to me, please. Introduce yourself. And it runs till August 18th. So it's just about 8 weeks or so. I will be in town until August 10th. So I'm in town for the majority of that. So if anybody wants to hang with me at the museum, I am available to do that.
Is there a life for this after a PTown? Do you intend to take it elsewhere?
I'm going to plug my book. So this is the book, Artists of Provincetown. It is available online at my website, ronamato.com. I love that the museum is doing the exhibition, and I think that the exhibition is very, very important. But I think the book has reach into the future that's
Good.
really, really important. It's a document of this community at this moment in time.
Mhm.
84 full color portraits. Norma's book on equal ground is still in the museum bookstore. My book is also in the museum bookstore. I'm hoping that when I get there, the two of them are next to each other, because I think if somebody was to purchase both of them, they would really get a kind of visual history of the artist community in town. And hopefully somebody will pick this up. I don't know if I will continue. For this year, I am not going to continue because I'm going to really focus on the exhibition, but I may continue it into the future. But I seriously hope that after I'm gone, somebody picks it up. And
Good.
to think that there might be a century's worth of artist portraits from Provincetown just makes me feel like I've really done something. I've become part of something important.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you see this man on the street, grab him and get a photograph taken with him.
Grab me.
We do forget though that our history is not that long, and it's important that people like you help us write it so we have it there to remember, especially for the crisis we went through. It's been great to talk to you and wish you well, and we'll see you at the opening, and we'll see you in the street as well. Of PTown.
Please reach out to me. I'd love to see you and say hello to me at the opening, and maybe to submit a proposal to the Provincetown Art Association and Museum for an exhibition.